Hello, hello, hello. This is Warren Redlick. I am here with Galiano Tiramani from Boxabl. I really want to thank him for coming on my channel. Galiano had a couple of interviews recently with uh, Gali from Hyperchange and with Meet Kevin. I actually may meet Kevin in person myself soon. I'm really excited about that. So I watched both of those interviews that helped me figure out what I wanted to ask you. So I have a whole bunch of questions for you. But before I get started, Galiano, do you want to give an introduction of yourself, who you are, and what Boxabl is?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on your show. As you said, my name is Galiano Tiramani. I'm one of the founders of Boxabl. We are here in Las Vegas, Nevada, trying to set up what we think will become the world's most advanced modular housing factory. So, we are doing this company with the goal of dramatically reducing housing costs. And we hope to achieve that by just making building construction compatible with the factory mass production and assembly line. Because currently, 90% of buildings are built by hand, one at a time. Factory built housing exists, but it hasn't really worked well or caught on. That's for a number of reasons. Primarily, we think that the shipping problem that they have, where they're shipping these wide loads that are very expensive and cumbersome. So our initial innovation that we needed before we could do anything else was to fix that shipping problem. So the results are pretty cool. You can see it on the website, boxabl.com. These are a 20-foot wide house that folds up to 8 feet so it can ship highway legal. And then when it arrives on site, it just sets up quickly. And then you've got your little house. And right now we are early stage. Yep.
Let me just explain that for people because I think it's important. And you explained it with Meet Kevin. If you're driving down the road and you see a vehicle that says wide load, it costs a lot more for that to be done. And a lot of modular homes, maybe is the right term. A lot of other manufactured homes are shipped that way, and it's very expensive to get them to this home site from the factory. Your approach makes that much less expensive.
Exactly. That's perfect explanation.
Okay. And I'm sorry for cutting you off there. I just wanted to explain that point.
Yeah, no problem. I guess what I was about to say was just that, we're a new company with a new idea, and we're setting up our first manufacturing plant right now. And hopefully we'll be cranking out, thousands of houses soon. But things are just kind of getting started, and it's early days for us.
Cool. So you mentioned Las Vegas. I was just actually in Las Vegas the day before the Plaid event for Tesla. For people who don't, for you may not know this, my channel is like I'm basically an Elon Musk fanboy. Nice. But I'm broader than that. I like talking about people and businesses that are pursuing revolutionary change. So I don't know if you're familiar with like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. I think there are companies that are trying to revolutionize how we create meat. I think that I agree with you very strongly that the housing industry is ripe for disruption. And I would love to see somebody do it. I'm not sure you're it, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. So, cool. But I wanted to ask you about Las Vegas. I was just there, and I rode in the Boring Company tunnels. Have you experienced that yet? Are you aware of it? What have you seen?
No, I haven't gone and checked it out, but I heard I think the new Resort Worlds hotel has access to that, and I'm definitely going to head over there when I get a free moment.
Yeah, it's coming. I don't know where your location is. I know you have a new factory location. Was it North Las Vegas?
Yeah, it's city of North Las Vegas. It's about 20 minutes from the Strip and the airport.
Okay, so I don't know whether the Boring Company's long-term plan for the Vegas Loop extends close to where you're located, but it can make transportation a lot more convenient for you and your workers depending on where they have to go. So, cool. Not just for the Strip, but hopefully it can actually help people get from home to work and work to home and all that. And I'm really excited about that. I think that's a revolution in transportation along with what Tesla's doing. So I wanted to ask you, people who follow my channel really closely know I'm working on building a cabin. And I live in a place where the zoning requirements are a minimum of 750 square feet, or not the place where I'm going to build my cabin has a minimum zoning of 750 square feet. So a casita would be too small. And as far as I know, right now, you're just building one of them. You don't have like combined units yet. It's coming. And of course, I'm far from Las Vegas, so the shipping to get that to Florida would be high. But I've been looking at a steel building. And the steel building plan quote that I have, which is out of date because, materials costs have gone up. We might talk about that later. Was around $17,000 built, not including the concrete pad, not including plumbing, not including insulation. You guys do a lot more in your units than what I'm going to have this, but this is about 1,000 square feet and it's going to cost me about $17,000. So I've seen people ask you about manufactured homes. What do you think about steel buildings as competition for what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you're describing is more of a shed structure. It doesn't have insulation, so not really. Doesn't really make too much sense to compare that, price wise. But at the end of the day, pretty much every building type, whether it's steel or anything else that is site built, I think is not going to win the race for the future of housing, because it's just incredibly inefficient to build anything on site. It's very expensive, and you don't get any of the advantages that we get in all our other products as a result of the factory.
So I looked at the Regulation D, what do you call it? Prospectus? Is that the right
Yep.
term for it?
Yep.
I read through that. You have a deal with the Department of Defense to build 156 casitas.
Yep.
They're going to pay you in the ballpark of $60,000 a unit. And according to what I read in your prospectus, if I understood it, your raw materials cost for those 156 casitas is about $3 million, which works out to about $20,000 a unit. Do my numbers sound close to right?
Well, that's kind of a tricky discussion nowadays because of commodities pricing. So when we started this, it is very different than where we're at now. Now we're seeing, multiple 100% increases in steel and lumber and shipping costs. It's not $3,000 to get a container from China anymore. It's $15,000. I mean, the world is really crazy when it comes to logistics and manufacturing. We've been trying to source, I think, millions of tons of steel, and we just can't even find it. Even though we're paying crazy prices on the steel, it's just so hard to find availability. So a lot of the different manufacturers of the raw materials have companies on what's called, I guess, allocation, where they say, all right, you guys want 1,000 pounds? We're only getting 100 because that's all we have, and that's what we're giving you. So we'll see if these things, we'll see if we see relief in this in the next year. Maybe we catch up, maybe the prices come down, or maybe it's caused by, inflation and money printing, and maybe the prices keep going up. No matter what, though, I'm not worried at all about raw material pricing, because everyone has to pay for raw materials, and Boxabl will pay the same as the other guys, but we have these principles that they don't, and that includes a radically simplified design with dramatically less components. It includes standardization, repeatability, scale, bulk purchasing power, automation, which will get better and better over time. Of course, the shipping solution. So all of these things that we get from the assembly line that these site builders will never have.
I appreciate that, and I think we're seeing really, really widespread supply chain issues all across the economy in all kinds of ways. It's not like I know manufacturers are seeing it, but I feel like we've been seeing it for a long time in a lot of different ways. But the Regulation D prospectus was dated like May 23rd, 2021. So that's about a month ago. Was that, I mean, maybe the numbers were drafted before and that wasn't updated for May 23rd. I don't know, but I suspect you're correct. I think you're probably right that the materials costs have gone up since whenever those numbers were generated.
Yeah, so the date on that offering memo you looked at is just because we swapped out the terms of the investment a few days ago. That offering memo was actually written, quite a while ago. So, we'll update that soon.
Yeah, that's just a suggestion. Then you should update that. And maybe it was clear and I missed it, but that's just a suggestion. Make sure that's clear. But the point I was going for there was my dream for what you're doing, for what I've talked to a friend in Miami he and I are like constantly talking about what are we going to start up, what business are we going to do, and then we never do anything, but we're talking about it. We talked about doing a housing startup, and to me, it's like, well, okay, and you actually really touched on something really crucial. You said fewer parts. I don't know how closely you follow Elon, but Elon has this famous line: "The best part is no part. The best process is no process."
Exactly.
And Sandy Munro talks about this. If you can reduce the number of parts and reduce the number of process, like they give bonuses to, if somebody figures out a way to save a gram in a car, that's like a bonus, just save 1 gram a day and you've just reduced the weight of your vehicle. There's all kinds of great things like that. And I love the way that you think like that. But ultimately your ability to deliver a product to a customer at cost, getting the cost down, hinges on, you can't get lower than your materials costs. Right? There's an asymptote. No matter how good you are at your processes, no matter how automated you get, your material costs are sort of like a fundamental limit on how low you can go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's not really the whole picture for Boxabl, because we have innovated on the types of building materials. So we are actively going through the product and refining it and trying to reduce the number of components and swapping components that aren't don't make sense for the price. So what that has resulted in is that this product is not built using the traditional methods that you would see in North America. North America is all stick frame lumber construction. That's not what Boxabl is. We have a laminated panel system that uses totally different materials, very little traditional lumber. And so, it's fun for us. We get to keep tweaking this thing, and I'm sure we'll do it for years. I'm sure every couple of years we'll come out with a new version of the product. And we have a roadmap for upgrades or modifications to the design that we think are going to continue to lower the cost dramatically. So, there's a whole big long list of different things we can tweak on this to bring the cost down. And some of those things have different capital requirements. There's different considerations there, and we're doing everything we can to bring the price down, because that's what this is all about. And one cool thing about our product is, by kind of throwing out the traditional stuff and starting from scratch, we were able to very carefully pick and choose every single material and manufacturing method in this thing to meet all the requirements. And for a building, there's an incredible amount of requirements. You have not just the tests you have to pass, the strength, the fire resistance, weight, water resistance, material costs, all these different variables, and they don't always align. So you're kind of sometimes working against each other. Like, one material that might make it stronger will make it too heavy, and so you kind of got to keep doing that. And what we've come up with is very different and hopefully a game changer.
Kevin said that he was going to get you statewide approval if he gets to be governor. And I was thinking that whenever you want to do anything, there's so many, and you actually mentioned something, you like tweaked my libertarian bone. You said something about too many governments doing too much or something, but it's almost like if we had like a federal standard that, hey, we've just decided this meets federal approval for the entire country. I don't know if that would violate the principles of federalism, but it would be a lot easier for companies to produce products for we do that with cars. Generally speaking, if the federal government says a car is good, it's good in every state.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
So there is a version of that. There's a few different ways to get these types of buildings approved. One is on the state level with the modular program, and the other is a federal 50-state HUD code. That's for manufactured housing. That's how trailer homes, double wides are approved. Unfortunately, they've created a bad stigma for themselves.
Right.
So the 50-state HUD approval, which is way better, because trust me, I'd rather get one regulatory approval than 50. But unfortunately, the 50-state HUD approval is frowned upon everywhere, because everyone thinks, oh, it's a trailer park. Zoning will exclude.
I was going to say it probably restricts your zone. It probably restricts your zoning.
Yep. Yeah. So we will end up getting our product approved, I believe, under the modular program, under the manufactured housing program, and under the RV codes. So that's the goal. We're starting with modular, but I just want to give our customer as many options as they need. And if it's easier for them to get something approved because it's X, and we have that possibility and we can provide it to them, then we're going to do it.
So somebody asked this question, and I thought it was a good question. Like for my cabin, I'm probably going to do a poured concrete foundation. Is that necessary? for Boxabl, or is there some other option that would still work?
Our units are compatible to any foundation, and the foundation becomes important because it transitions a building from being personal property into real property. So when it becomes permanently affixed to the foundation, then it's real property, it's real estate. You can get more loan programs on it. But our product doesn't need a foundation. We could set it up on cinder blocks. We could throw it on the grass, on in the parking lot. Pretty much anywhere it needs to be. And one thing that goes back to these regulations that exist for every single thing imaginable, and I'm a libertarian too, by the way, is you can kind of start to think about housing a little bit differently when we have these factory built units, because a traditional house is built off of that foundation. If you take the foundation away, it's going to fall apart. But our houses are not. So do they always need to be permanent buildings, permanently affixed? Is that always practical? Does that always make sense? Maybe not.
Okay. So one of the questions I had was looking back, like at a 2019 article in the Las Vegas Review Journal. I think early on, Boxabl's plan was only to sell to builders and contractors and developers and not sell direct to consumer. And it seems like there's been a shift. Like your DoD contract is effectively you're selling direct. I mean, it's direct to customer, but it's not to an individual. It's to a government agency. When did the switch happen where you decided we're going to sell direct to consumer as well? And what complications does that add?
Yeah, so originally, kind of a different idea. We were planning to just mass produce the room shells and not finish them out inside with a kitchen or bathroom. And we had started originally with a bigger prototype that was a 1,400 square foot home with two 20 by 40 units. But we went to the first builder show with those units, and then we came back to the office after the show and we thought about it and we said, all right, well, what's a good plan of attack? How do we start? I mean, this is a huge undertaking. And I had noticed what was going on in California with accessory dwelling unit laws, and it just seemed like a huge opportunity that made so much sense. So then all of a sudden,
could you tell people what that means?
Yeah, so in California, they are now very friendly towards backyard houses. So if you have a house in California, pretty much every single house in the state, you are now allowed to put a little house in the backyard.
A
and casita. I think in many cases, I think in many cases, you're allowed to put more than one in the backyard. They've gone so far as to prohibit local cities and counties from banning these types of buildings at the state level. They've reduced setback requirements. All kind of things to make this more friendly. So as a result, everyone's doing it. If you live in LA and you own a house and you have a backyard with space, and you can throw down another unit in there, and your site's already developed and your utilities are already in because you have a house there, the numbers crunch on that, and it's a great rental return for people, or to put a family member in. So we were just looking at that, and we said, let's make this really simple. Let's create a product that people can understand, where there's a big market for it. And we said, casita, and we finished that little configuration, and we kind of announced it, and people just went crazy for it, crazier than we ever expected, because we always thought, our concept of a building system where different size room modules can stack and connect to build any building type on the planet was a big deal. But we didn't necessarily think these little casitas were that big of a deal until we announced it, and we just got viral response, thousands and thousands of emails and product reservations. So I guess it was a good call, and it's nice, a nice place to start, lower barrier to entry, physically smaller product to deal with. So lots of different considerations there.
So the original plan was to sell direct to builders or developers, and now there's this direct to consumer version. But when you sell to builders or developers, there's going to be a markup to the ultimate home buyer, right?
Well, that still kind of is the case, because what we're selling is not necessarily like a finished product. It needs some level of installation and finishing. Although we've worked very hard to get everything we possibly could done in the factory, 90% of it, we're still handing over a product that really always needs a contractor in the middle there. So I think even in the cases where the end user reaches out directly to Boxabl, we'll still be connecting them to the contractor, and the contractor will be the ultimate real customer to Boxabl. So that's kind of what we're thinking the process is going to be.
With the DoD contract, are you guys delivering finished product, or is somebody else coming in and finishing it up?
So Boxabl will always deliver, drop off a folded up house. This casita has a kitchen bathroom in it. When we drop it off, it has flooring, it has heating, cooling, windows, electric, everything ready to just kind of bolt to a foundation and connect to utilities. And then there's, for the end retail customer, there's a degree of customization that they might request. They might want to tweak it. They might want to build a deck, a driveway, whatever it needs. And these contractors are just going to, charge for their services, I think, to do that kind of stuff.
But I mean, on the 156 units you're doing for the Department of Defense, you're dropping off at a military base. Is there another contractor that's coming in to do the finishing? Is the DoD doing it?
For the setup.
Is it like a project for the soldiers to, all right, today we're finishing this up? How is that going to get done?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to be providing the room modules, and that's it. And they'll be in charge of the setup.
And you're not interacting with whoever's going to be doing the final finishing?
Just providing, instructions and be there available to answer questions.
But I mean, you don't have an existing relationship with whoever that contractor is, or whoever at the DoD is going to be doing that final steps.
No, we don't. And Boxabl just wants to remain as the room module manufacturer. We want to be really good at that, really efficient. We don't ever want to get involved with any site work, any installation, anything like that. We don't think we'd be able to scale if we were, kind of bogged down with all that custom stuff. Okay.
I want to ask you something kind of into the financial world a little bit. And it's hard. I think it's going to be hard to predict this because, like you said, material prices are hard to predict. But do you have, in some sense, a vision of what the average selling price for a casita will be in, say, 2022, and what the cost of goods sold will be, so you can get a sense of what margins look like?
I don't really want to give any specific numbers because it's just such a crazy world right now. All I know is we're planning to probably charge double retail price of double our raw materials cost. We think that we're coming in way under the competition. We just did another competitor analysis the other day, and we could not find really an ADU solution in California that was under 100,000. I mean, most of them were over 150,000. So I think we're in such a good spot where we're going to be able to sell a product that's way cheaper than anyone else out there, especially in California, and also have great margins. And, there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of unknowns in setting up this factory. There's a lot of unknowns in even our labor costs and how those pan out early on. And of course, raw materials is just like an external variable as well. But for me, I just believe in these principles that we have. And I think that no matter what, these principles are putting us ahead of everyone else out there, even the other factory built housing guys, because I just see critical flaws in what they're doing, whether it's related to the shipping or the use of lumber frame stick construction in factory modular plants. Okay.
If you don't mind, I'm going to share screen for a second, and I want to show. This is from the crowdfunding, or this is from the Regulation D document. See if I know how to share screen. That's always a question. I'm not good at Zoom yet. So I don't know if you can see this here. It says, can you see this?
Yes.
So this is page 33. It says, this is giving $3 million for acquisition of raw materials for 150 casita boxes. I think it's really 156, but that's in the ballpark. You're expecting to spend 1.6 million for warehouse space, 9 million for labor. When I look at these numbers, and I compare it to what you have in terms of the money you've raised so far, where's all the money? I mean, is the DoD paying in advance, or are they paying? How do you get all this money together to pay for all the stuff that you're doing to build 150 casita boxes? I don't think you have the money that's listed there. I don't think you have that cash on hand right now.
Yeah, so to date, have, brought in maybe 13, 14 million plus in investor money. Additionally, we did negotiate a 75% prepayment on that contract. And on another front, myself or Paolo are always ready to step in and fund the company more if we need to, but I don't think we will, because we're just getting a lot of traction.
Okay, so I mean, in other words, the DoD is, because when I'm let me see if I can find the page. It was close to that. There's some numbers on how much cash you had on hand at the end of 2019, and what the expenses were in 2019, and I'm just trying to get a feel for what the numbers are going forward, and what the numbers were for 2020, because I don't see those numbers in the prospectus. Like,
Yeah,
how much cash on hand did you have at the end of 2020?
I'm guessing we have 10 million in the bank right now. That's just a guess, and it should be right around there.
And does that include some money from DoD on that contract?
Yeah, it includes some of that prepayment that I mentioned we had negotiated.
Okay. So like, here's use of proceeds, and this is like, you're trying to raise $50,000 in this Regulation D. Is that what it's called? Regulation D funding?
Yeah, it's a Reg D 506C for accredited investors.
Okay. I should know this stuff better, and I don't. But there's if you succeed in raising 10 million, this is where the money goes. There's three columns here for people who are looking at this. There's if you succeed in raising 10 million, that's where the money goes. If you succeed in raising 25 million, then you spend more money, and
yeah,
if you get to 50 million, is that ongoing, this Regulation D funding? And I think you told Kevin you'd raised a total of $13 million so far. I don't think that includes the money that you guys have contributed. You personally have contributed.
No, it doesn't. That's outside capital. Yeah, so there's a number of first of all, this numbers you're showing me right here, these are just rough estimates,
right,
early stage rough estimates, but it's really a function of how big can we start. So we're getting there, start work, figure out the assembly line, start scaling up, and then how fast do I hire 200 people for 2 shifts? How much raw materials do we bring in? If we're building a factory that can produce 180 million in revenue at full speed, how much of that money, the cost of raw materials, has to be out there at one time, based on payment terms with suppliers and lead times and all those issues. So we could get in there right now, and I could not raise another dollar, and we could start production. But it would be slower than if we had more money and could run a little faster. So right now, we really don't have all the money we need, but we are running full speed ahead, and everything seems to be falling into place.
No, and it seems like I've seen that I remember one of the investor calls, everything relates to Tesla to me. It's almost like everything relates to either Seinfeld or Tesla for me. And I remember that Zach Kirkhorn was talking about that they had more money than they expected, and they invested more in the factory early in Berlin, so that it would be basically coming up to production quicker and producing higher volumes quicker. And if you have more money, you could get more done. You could be more ready for the future you want to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, the plan here is a really big, grandiose plan. We're trying to, build, more buildings than any other single entity all over the entire planet, and take over. So, the money we need for this first factory, that's not the end of the money we need. I'm going to go and set up this first factory, and we are going to start selling units. And then I'm going to come back and say, look, everything's proven. We're selling, we're rocking and rolling. Let's do this. The risk is gone. Now we need, more capital to scale this more. And this first factory we're doing, it's very, very limited automation there, but it's all planned out to be compatible with that automation. And getting from what we have now, this 170,000 foot factory, to a real, factory based off automotive manufacturing principles, which, in my opinion, is the coolest thing out there. That's a huge leap. That's going to require an incredible amount of capital. But the money will be there because this is a huge problem in probably the biggest market around. I mean, this is $1 trillion problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, I think something you said really struck me was, I think you were saying ultimately this factory should be able to produce maybe 3,000 or 3,600 units a year. And if it's only $50,000 at 3,000 units, I think you're talking, or maybe 3,600, I think you're talking about $180 million a year.
Correct.
That's not bad. And then it may end up being $60,000 a unit with the increased cost of increase in material costs. So you may be over $200 million a year in revenue just on this first factory. That's a promising start.
Yeah. And then one more thing is, it's a big factory. It's a big undertaking. It's a big place to start especially for a company that hasn't really produced many houses yet. But in the grand scheme of housing demand, 3,600 units is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. That could all go to a few apartment developments here in Vegas. So, the real opportunity here is just so incredibly big to even start making a dent in those housing shortages, whether it's in California or in another country.
Yeah. All right, I just stopped sharing. I want to go back to that screen that I had up. So in 2019, obviously you hadn't really gotten started yet, limited revenue, very common for a startup company, incurred a net loss for 2019. I'm going to guess that 2020 was also a net loss, or am I wrong about that?
Oh yeah, we're lighting money on fire right now. We're hiring people, we're buying millions of dollars in equipment, et cetera, and we're not selling anything yet. And that's kind of being the issue from day one is I would talk to an investor and they would say, well, have you sold any yet? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, this is a little bit different than a little widget or a software company. The pitch here is assembly line factory production. So that's what we need. We need an assembly line factory. So until we get that factory turned on and we get up to a certain amount of units per month, we'll be losing money until then. But I do think that this first factory will be profitable relatively early on once it's up and running.
Okay, so here on this page in the second paragraph, it relates. I think Paolo is your father.
Correct.
Yeah. So Paolo is at that point had chipped in $1.6 million roughly to the company. One of the things that I'm going to ask you, I'm going to get a little tougher on you here for a second, but maybe you have answers and I want to hear them. If Paolo's chipped in 1.6 million, but your valuation, as far as I see it, I think in the crowdfunding round, valued the company at $226 million. So you had about $5 million from crowdfunding investors. And I think you said total raise was $13 million. So they've contributed about 40% of the capital of the company, but they only own 2% of the company and they only get preferred stock. And I think the same issue, I don't know how it's going to work with the Regulation D financing, because it's really more of a, what was the word for it? It's a subordinated convertible promissory note. People aren't getting common stock when they invest in your company. Yeah.
So the plan here is to eventually list this or do an IPO or some mechanism so that it's tradable and people get liquidity. So they are getting preferred shares that convert to common in the event of an IPO, and that protects their liquidation preference by keeping them as preferred shares. So, if we close the company tomorrow, even though me and Paolo own, 85%, let's say, we don't get 85% of the money. It goes back to those investors first because they're preferred. So, and then on the valuation front, this is I think the last offering was a 226 million valuation. And yeah, it's a high valuation, but what we're doing is very big. What we're starting with. Yep.
I mean, I actually have a vision for myself. I have an idea for a startup unrelated to housing, and I kind of see where you're coming from. And look, we're putting our 100% of our time into this. We're risking our capital on this, and much larger. I doubt you have any other investors invested 1.6 million, right?
No, Paolo's put in more than that, and he is the biggest sole investor. Right. So he's putting his money where his mouth is. And right. Also, we've devoted years of our time to this as well.
Right. That's what I mean. So, but is it, I mean, maybe you're not getting pushback from investors, but I can guess you're not having that much trouble. You're selling investments. I think, am I correct that the crowdfunding round sold out at 3.9 million, or am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, so ultimately price is determined by what someone's willing to pay for something. And as it turns out, in just 13 days, people were willing to pay that price for $4 million of our shares, because we sold out really fast and now have more sitting in an oversubscription wait list as well. So really the bet that investors are making is, what happens if this factory is successful and these guys do an IPO? Where's the price then? And once we prove that, this company is worth an incredible amount of money, because if I can sit here and say, yeah, we can mass produce housing at below market rates for construction, that's incredibly valuable. So right now there's risk involved in that. That's why the share price is 71 cents. And then once that risk is gone, because we've proven it, price is going to go up way higher. And that's the bet that investors are making on this. And that valuation is based off of a number of things, including analysis of the revenue of this first factory. So this is a factory that's sized to produce 200 million in revenue in with a product that has the potential to disrupt an incredibly outdated and massive industry.
Okay. Does Paolo get a salary? Do you get a salary? How many salary employees are there? I'm not asking you for the amount. I'm just asking if you are salary.
Yeah, we just recently started taking a salary, and I think we've got about 20 employees or so right now. We're hiring people every week. Things are kicking into high gear because we're about to move into this new building. So that kind of overhead will continue to increase as we bring people on board and scale up.
Okay. So I looked, and you had a chief, the other key employee that was listed in the prospectus was Kyle Denman, senior engineer. Yeah. A lot of times I see you guys as sort of the reverse. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Lucid Motors. I'm like this massive skeptic of Lucid Motors. I'm like the world's biggest critic of Lucid. And I look at them, and they have this like slate of like 19 people on their on the SPAC merger document. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like you're too top heavy. And there's all these people who have all these great credentials, but I'm like, I don't believe that the company's really going to produce a car. I'm very extreme on that. And I look at yours, and it's almost the opposite, that I don't see, like, they've got all these guys with all these credentials, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't buy it. I don't know. Is there anybody in your company who has experience delivering a product at scale, manufacturing a product at scale?
Yeah, I mean, we have a factory guy who's in charge of the factory, and but really, I mean, we don't have anyone with a fancy resume, and I don't necessarily put a lot of weight into that. And we're very frugal, and we're trying to get good value. I'm not trying to blow all our money paying a salary for someone who's
right.
Just for their name.
Right, that's kind of the point.
To make it look cool for investors, to attract investors. So, I want to get, fresh people who are unproven, who are going to work incredibly hard because they have something to gain. And I think we're making good decisions so far on our employees, and we're building a great core team.
Yeah, and I would say to some extent, and I hope this isn't offensive, but I think building a car that has to move and go 100 miles an hour and corner and brake, and there's a whole lot more moving parts in a car. So maybe manufacturing a car is a heck of a lot harder than manufacturing a 400 square foot casita. I mean, not to say that it's not hard. I'm just saying.
You're right. I think you're right.
I think, you got to have the battery management system, and there's all the, their HVAC system really has to work well because of all the load they put on it. So, all right.
That's the joke I've said before. I've said, look, this isn't a car. This is much simpler. Why has no one put this into the mass production yet?
Yeah, no, I see that. In the prospectus, there's also this technology license that some of the technology, the patents or whatever, are licensed from Build IP, which is owned by Paolo, the CEO, licensed to Boxabl, the corporation. does that license, and it's exclusive license, but is there a time limit on the license?
No, there's no time limit. Paolo's background is intellectual property licensing. So for, the past 30 years or so, he's invented products, patented them, and then licensed or sold those patents, usually for a royalty fee of, 5%. So that's just kind of his MO. So that's how he thinks of things. And so he decided to put a 1% royalty on the intellectual property from Boxabl, and then assign that IP to this holding company to protect it from liability. And it is an exclusive license agreement in perpetuity forever. Okay. It's really just as good as ownership. But the holding company can't terminate or anything. We thought it was a good idea from the protection side as well, to kind of add a layer of insulation to protect those patents, in case something, happens to Boxabl.
Okay. So I have other questions that I wrote down, but I feel like we've covered them. So I don't want to dig into those anymore. I'm really impressed with your answers so far, to be frank. So I really enjoy it. I guess, no, like I have questions about like Florida wind rating, but of course that doesn't really make sense because I don't think you have any plans to ship to Florida anytime soon, right?
We, are keen on the California market at first, but the product does have really good wind ratings because of the type of materials we're using for the walls. So I believe that it's going to be able to withstand the worst hurricane wind conditions in the country, which is like Miami, Florida.
I just want to say to the people in the chat, if you have specific questions you want me to ask, I'm going to continue talking to Galiano, but if I see a good question, and I'm not saying every question is a good question, but if I see a good question, I'll ask it. But you mentioned the structure. So what is it about the structure of a Boxabl home that makes it so sturdy? I think you were talking to Meet Kevin, you said for earthquakes. Yep. I know there's something about a steel frame, but it's not just the steel frame. What is it that makes it so sturdy?
Yeah, we're using laminated panel principles. So it's pretty cool. Basically, we lay out the different substrates, and they are glued together using a polyurethane adhesive that creates an incredibly strong, irreversible bond. And then you just have this huge rock solid panel. So like, if you look at a traditional house, it's held together by nails. You look at a traditional modular house, when they go down the road, it shakes and jiggles, and there's pretty much all this damage when it arrives. But ours, this lamination technology is amazing, and we've explored every type of material for walls that we could, and just honed in on the best one. We have the shipping solution, which is there, and that'll exist, no matter what building materials we use for the wall. And then the actual building materials are a whole separate thing. So we're going through an incredible amount of third-party testing on that. It's wind rating, transverse loading, axial loading, fire resistance, water intrusion, just everything you can imagine. So, instead of having hundreds of little pieces of wood and thousands of nails, we have bigger blocks of materials, less total materials that are all processed by computer-controlled equipment down to precision, accurate within a millimeter, subcomponents that then assembled together rapidly on our assembly line, and can be assembled with unskilled labor. And because these things, all of our parts, they all just kind of clip together, and if you put it in upside down, it's not going to fit. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's basically we have steel, we have a special type of ceramic board, we have EPS foam that makes up the core of the wall for the insulation, and that kind of makes the sandwich panel. And then around the perimeter of that panel is a PVC extrusion that serves as just like an end cap to the panel, and a hinge so it can fold where it folds, and a gasket so that it can seal up just like a car door. And that's our main innovation in those building materials, in the floors, walls, and ceilings. And then the rest of the stuff that goes inside the building, kitchen, cabinets, toilets, mostly standard stuff. We are starting to innovate on that side as well to try to reduce the costs.
Okay, Jessica, I'm going to ask your question about Cybertruck in a minute, but You described the structure of the walls, and Will Bradbury's in the chat. He has the channel Boring Revolution. Jessica Kirsch is another YouTuber, and I think she wants one of your casitas in Starbase area.
Well, thank
but
you.
That's why her Cybertruck question is going to lead to that. But Will was talking. I was communicating with Will the other day, and he mentioned this concept called structural is it SIP, structural insulated panels? Is that the right term? And there
exactly,
is
and that's
there is an approach where people build those on site.
yeah. So those are the principles that we're using. Most commonly, you'll see OSB wood with EPS foam. We're not using that. We're using different stuff, but it is still structurally insulated panel. You have these different substrates with different characteristics, and then you laminate them together, and you kind of get all the characteristics in one. So it's really amazing stuff. Yes, that is done in on-site construction. Generally, it's more expensive. There's a big learning curve because it's a different way of building it, but it's incredibly energy efficient. So that's why it's popular. I think that's the main reason SIPs are popular. For us, it was different reasons. It was simpler to design it like that. But yeah, we have a lot of improvements on the site built SIPs, even on the energy efficiency front, because a site built SIP generally has a lumber spline every 4 feet where they connect the panels together, which is not as strong as what we have and not as energy efficient as what we have. We don't have those lumber splines. Our whole entire panels are already pre-built and laminated in one big block. And because they don't need to be handled by a person on site, they can be handled by equipment in a factory. We've been able to simplify that design and improve it.
And you also have, like, maybe there's plumbing built into the walls or electrical wiring built into the walls, which means if I build an SIP home on site, I still got to put the plumbing and the wiring in.
Oh yeah, you got a lot of work to do.
And you guys already have that covered. So
yeah,
that's go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so that's why I don't believe in any other solution but a factory solution, because there's guys out there doing panelized solutions where they prefab the wall panels and assemble them on site. But then you're just stuck, still doing site work, still bringing out the plumber, bringing out the electrician. We cannot do that in a custom manner. And the example I use is just imagine any other product buying it, and it comes like that. Imagine you ordered a Tesla, and some guys show up at your house with a bunch of pieces of metal and welding torches and hammers and just start building this thing in the driveway, and they're making a noise and they're making a mess, and they build the car, and it's all fucked up, and it took 6 months. That's what they're doing with houses. We're just used to it because it's like the normal way to do it. But if we switched cars all of a sudden and started building them the way we build houses, it would seem crazy. So we've got to move the stuff into the factory. Okay,
so Jessica's question, I'm going to ask the question in a different way. If I want to tow a casita from your factory to my home, how much towing capacity do I need for my vehicle?
So it weighs 12,000 pounds. So if you have 12,000 pounds, you should be good. There are some other considerations as well when loading a trailer, like tongue weight. So the weight pushing down on the hitch. Really, I think we need dually pickup trucks with the correct trailering system.
But in theory,
you should be able to pull it around.
There's a chance that a tri-motor Cybertruck with 14,000 pound towing capacity with the right trailer could actually pull it off.
I think 100% that truck can pull this unit. We would just need the trailering system that we have in the works that gives that zero, push down tongue weight. But yeah.
So there you go, Jessica. You need a tri-motor, and then you'd be able to make it happen. Oh, she says, is that the weight limit that they're going for? 14,000? The single motor is a 7,000 pound towing capacity. The dual motor is a 10,000 pound towing capacity, and the tri-motor is supposed to be a 14,000 pound towing capacity. Yeah.
Love it. That's just what we need. That's just enough.
So Jessica says she needs the ability to tow a Boxabl away should a hurricane roll into the Starbase vicinity. Jessica, I think that's incorrect. I think you need to build your foundation high enough that the Boxabl won't get flooded, and then leave it there. It'll survive the hurricane. It's wind rated, right?
Yeah, it's also pretty water resistant too, because we're not using the sheetrock in the interior, and we have very little common lumber that can um, rot. So I think that if our units get flooded, they dry out, and they'll, for the most part, be good to go.
So I'm just going to address this because I knew this was coming. Everyone is asking about Elon and his Boxabl, and I just want to say I've seen you interviewed twice before. Your answer was no comment, so I'm not asking you about Elon. Okay. I saw Kevin danced around it like 2 or 3 times trying to get an answer for you. I'm not even, if you have something you want to say, I'll let you say it, but I'm not going to ask you, and I've got other things to ask you. So
Yeah, thank you. I needed to steer clear of that for
okay.
now. So yeah,
So
apologize. I can't
so
be
Doge
more
Army
educated.
asks, and I think this is related to Jessica's question. I think the answer to this is no, but I'll let you answer it. Can the house be picked up and moved to another location easily after it's been set up? I think once the house has been set up, there was a lot of work done to set it up in its location. It's not so easy to undo all that, right?
So you know, the units we have, we've packed them and unpacked them and taken them all over the place, and that's totally possible within our system. It just depends on, you know, what you're going to do with it when you set it up. Are you going to start modifying it? Are you going to build a deck? Are you going to build a foundation? If you're going to do stuff that, you know, costs a lot of money to modify it or build a foundation, do you want to pick it up later and take it away? No. But you know, that's totally should be easy to do with our system. If you plan ahead and you say, you know what, I'm just going to unfold this thing in my backyard, plug in a hose, plug in an extension cord, and that's it. I'm not going to get a permit because I don't care. And then they come back and bust you for it, and then you just fold it up and take it away. One thing we're exploring is permanently affixing these to a trailer and certifying them under the RV laws, which would help people circumvent a lot of those requirements, because then, you know, a lot of places will allow an RV, and in which case you don't need a foundation, you don't need utilities hookups, and there's some pretty cool financing options for RVs, which is 25-year credit check only type financing. So we think that's going to be a great, you know, path for this product, but a little bit down the line.
And then would you maybe do like an incinerator toilet or some other kind of system for disposing of waste?
Yeah, you know, the off-grid stuff is going to be really cool. When we get there, we'll eventually do an off-grid model. Hopefully that'll be for a big customer like maybe FEMA or something, where they need an off-grid solution. But yeah, we could throw solar panels on, we could throw the special toilet on, or whatever else.
But that's probably I mean, my understanding is this year you're working on getting the casitas to the DoD.
We need to focus on the basics right now. There's a million different paths we could go down, and we will. But right now, the goal is to just get this factory turned on and start putting out houses and refine it from there.
Okay. And sorry, but then you get the DoD contract done, and then you're going to start delivering to consumers hopefully in 2022. Am I in the ballpark of correct?
Yeah, that's the plan. And I think that as soon as a few houses start coming off the assembly line, we'll have a better idea of what the factory output, you know, schedule might be, and then we'll probably start reaching out to people to get started on next steps, because there's a significant amount of preparation involved in buying our product. You know, it's not just a little widget you can go buy at the store.
Right. So somebody asked this question. Suppose somebody buys a casita in the early days. Is the first casita that they buy set up so that you could stack another one on top? Are they built that way, like right out of the get-go, or is that really you'd have to order one that's designed to be stacked?
Yeah, they're all rated now to go multi-story. We'll find out how many stories we can go. The last version, we got 3 stories kind of approval based on the testing, and we've made a few tweaks to hopefully make it stronger. And once we go through that testing again, we'll know what it can do. But yeah, I mean, we've stacked them already. There's a video I think on YouTube of it.
There's a question. I wouldn't have thought of this question, but I kind of like it. The factory space that you have, is it leased or is it bought? If it's a lease, how long is the lease? What's the status of that?
Yeah, so it's a brand new construction with, I think, a 5-year lease, full custom TI, tenant improvement, fit out. We don't plan to stay there forever, because we plan to be successful and grow into something 10 times bigger.
And is Supercar Systems using the same space? Somebody said this. I don't know where he got it from.
Yeah, so that's my dad's kind of side project. So Boxabl, as the tenant, is subleasing a little corner of that building to Paolo.
Okay. Jessica wants to know if you will ship to South Texas. I think the answer to that is eventually, but not yet. Am I close to correct?
Once we're producing these things, we'll ship them anywhere you want them.
Yeah.
I don't see why
I
not.
think I definitely think I'm detecting there's a lot of excitement among a lot of people that they want to see this happen. I kind of wonder in the end. I mean, let me turn this back to you say it's a $50,000 thing, but we know it's like from you talking to Kevin, I think with the raw materials cost going up, it's going to be more than 50,000. The DoD price is 60,000. But when you add in everything that has to be done at the site to install it, are we talking closer to $100,000 for a lot of these things?
Oh yeah, the site install costs are not to be overlooked. So that can range dramatically based on the site location. Is it difficult to access? What is the deal with the local permitting? Is the local government gonna really rip you off and beat you up, or are they gonna make it easy for you? How are utilities already established on your lot? How easy are they to connect? The foundation type you need. So yeah, what we're providing isn't necessarily like a final ready to do turnkey thing. It's a building material kind of where we're providing this building material that people use to complete the house with, and it takes a lot of the headache out of there, and it also takes a lot of the time out of there. But even if it was total cost like 150, 200,000, I mean, this is the reality in California of what they're dealing with. Although I think we're going to have a price so low one day that no one can ignore Boxabl, that it's competitive all around the country.
Let's go there. What's your dream? What does it end up costing 5 years from now? Everything's gone right. I realize that when you go along the way, you always hit bumps in the road. Elon always has these dreams for solar roofs going to be cost competitive with premium roofs. And I can tell you so far, Tesla has failed to deliver on that. I'm going to be making a video about that soon. But supposing everything goes well, where do you see that going? How low could a casita cost if everything went great?
Oh, I don't know about that, but my dream is that we have a 1,000,000 square feet out here in the desert, 100 acres. We're cranking out room modules, putting them in inventory. People can go online, use a configurator to stack and connect room modules, build their own custom house, click order, and it arrives next day on their job site. And it is not only a higher rated, higher quality product than what they can get, but also a lower cost than what they can get. And I think that's all totally achievable. It's a big undertaking, but it seems pretty reasonable to me. It's just going to be a lot of work to get there.
There's a question about the Regulation D offering that I kind of like, and I'm not sure I even know how you answer this question, but is there a time window on the Regulation D offering where it closes at a certain point?
We don't have one planned right now. We will probably close it in the future, but for now, it's just going to stay open.
It's not a fixed date. It's like when we raise enough money.
Yeah,
So,
it's
something along those lines.
Whatever I feel like. Yes, when we feel comfortable that we have enough money to execute, we'll probably stop accepting funds or something at some point.
And I'm really sure I don't understand this question. So I read the Regulation D document, but maybe I didn't read it carefully enough. David asks, how is the share price in the Regulation D calculated? What is it? I didn't see that there was a share price. Did I miss it?
So it's a bit confusing, and unfortunately, there's a lot of regulation around it, and I'll probably get yelled at for even like talking in this detail about securities offerings. But that Reg D is a convertible note that converts to stock when the Reg A offering is qualified. So that share price should hopefully be of that convertible note 79 cents times the discount amount. So the discount is from 10 to 30%. So based on the dollar amount that you invest, you'll end up, that convertible note will convert to a share price around 70 cents or so.
For those who didn't see it, and the smaller investors in the Regulation D round, when there's a conversion, they get a 10% discount on the share price. They get the shares with a 10% discount. there's another level where you get a 20% discount, and the highest level investors get a 30% discount. So let's see. Boxabl food truck trailer. I don't know if I see that. Do you see that as an application, doing Boxabl as a food truck on a trailer?
You know, I think people have been emailing us for a year with every single use case you could possibly imagine, and I'm sure there'll be all kind of stuff for it.
Okay, Jay Kemo asks, can you still invest? I think there were two ways of investing. There was the crowdfunding round and there's the Regulation D. Is the crowdfunding round closed?
Yes, but get on the wait list, and then you'll just be first in line.
Okay, and then the Regulation D offering is still open. If you go to boxabl.com, I think there's an invest button, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just go to the invest button, and you just kind of follow the steps there and read through everything, and people can see what's going on. But yeah, people can definitely still invest. We haven't really raised any money from institutions. It's all been individual investors.
Yeah, it's funny. Will Bradbury asks, I don't know if he's kidding or not. He asks, have you considered going public via a SPAC? And my guess is, I would phrase the question differently. There's these SPACs out there. Are any of them like calling you? Are you, or maybe you can't even talk about that. I don't even know.
You know, I'd rather not talk too much about the security stuff, because, you know, I'm just really scared that I'm going to say something I'm not supposed to say while we have this offering in the SEC and all that kind of stuff.
Elon Musk fans totally understand being careful with the SEC. Oh yeah, this was a question. I love this question. Your HVAC solution, I believe, is a mini split.
Yeah.
Have you looked at heat pumps? Is that an option? Because Tesla has been talking about doing an HVAC system with heat pump. Is a mini split a heat pump?
Yeah. So basically, it's an AC unit. When it's air conditioning, and when it's heat pump, it just kind of goes in reverse.
Okay, and
so that unit heats and cools.
All right. So, you know, are you aware that Tesla's been talking about coming out with a heat pump based HVAC product? I think relying on the heat pump that they use in the Tesla Model Y.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'm not familiar with what the actual innovation is there. I'd love to take a look. The mini splits are great. They are more energy efficient, they're more sanitary, and they're more compact. So that's why we picked them. And
my impression, and I could be wrong about this, is mini splits work really well for smaller spaces, but maybe they're not good for really large spaces. And maybe that's why they're called the mini split. Or because like we have one in my house, actually. The previous owner had a room where I think he had a lot of computer equipment, and he installed a mini split to keep that room cool. So I actually have one, and it does a pretty good job of cooling. But is there a reason why we're not all using mini splits on our large homes?
Maybe it's because you know, people are set in their ways. I think that's the reason for a lot of why we do things in construction. I know those units are much more popular overseas in other countries, and they haven't caught on as much in the US. Maybe it ends up more cost effective to do the ducting, because with the mini split, you're going to have a blower basically in almost every room. So not really sure, but you know, there's some nice solutions out there, and we'll just keep exploring them.
Okay. So I think I don't see any new questions, and I feel like I've taken up a lot of your time. Has Boxabl partnered with a solar provider? I think that's like right now you're just doing the basic thing, and solar it's something that you can do, but it's not something you're focusing on yet, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're a little too early to think about solar integration. We have to just get the houses out first.
I'm telling you, I'm looking at this chat, and people love your concept. This Mitridate says Boxabl microbrewery. I think that's probably a bit of a stretch. Oh, Admiral Medjay asked this question. I think this is this is a little premature, but when does he think automation of his assembly line will be completed? I think the short-term plan is it's not going to be automated for now, and then you're going to be figuring out how do we automate this once you get going.
Yeah, to start, we have two things. One is the fact that all the raws are processed by CNC equipment, which is automation. And then we're also going to do early on the actual panel assembly using the robot arms. And then after that, we'll have to really, you know, get very detailed into full, you know, custom automation, because, you know, it's nothing off the shelf that you can do with automation for the kind of thing we're doing. So I think that full automation is really the next step after this.
Okay. What about people are asking about Powerwall, battery backup for the home. My guess would be, since it's going to be an accessory building to the main home, if you are doing battery backup, you would probably do it on the main home. And was the idea that the Boxabl will feed off the main home?
Yeah, our units are just the room module ready to be connected to power. And that means whatever the customer wants to do. If they want to connect to the grid, they can. If they want to connect it to the main house that has a battery in there, they can. If they want to put their own battery on the Boxabl, they can. We're just leaving that up to the customer.
Do you know, would a Powerwall have enough peak kilowatts or peak wattage, whatever, to get the mini split running? I know with like a typical, like the air conditioners on my house with like a 3500, I forget what you call these things. You need to have a certain, if you have a generator, you need to have a certain peak load to be able to get the air conditioner up and running. There's a challenge to get a regular air conditioner up and running. Are mini splits like that as well, or is that not the same thing?
Well, the way that mini split actually cools is the same as a regular AC, but I believe we've done the calculations, and putting solar on our roof should be more than enough to power the unit, just based on like the square footage of the roof. But I don't really know too much about those solar numbers.
Now I got Boxabl franchise restaurant. People have a lot of. Do you feel like this happens a lot? You talk to people what you're doing, and everybody has ideas for how they could use this.
Exactly, and it's a big compliment to us because they want to be a customer and they like the product, and they're telling us what they're going to do with it. And just really an incredibly large market here because there's incredible amount of use cases for this product.
When did you realize you had something? I mean, I like you probably had an idea like this is a kind of cool idea, let's pursue this. And then at some point you talked to some people and you said, wait a minute, people like this more than I expected. Or did you have any kind of moments like that?
Well, that kind of keeps happening, but back in the beginning, early on when we got invited to this builder show, right around that time, the first builder show, and I decided to move from California to Vegas to pursue this full time, and that was the point where I made the decision and said, this is a huge opportunity here, and I can't think of anything else bigger.
And will people be able to buy them with Bitcoin or Dogecoin? Is that something I know you're a crypto guy. In your past, at least, and Elon got in a lot of trouble for his Bitcoin, has gotten a lot of heat for his Bitcoin positions. What do you think about people using Bitcoin or Dogecoin or some other crypto to buy Boxabl home?
Yeah, I love crypto. I've operated a money service business before this, and we will 100% be accepting crypto. And I think the plan is that if we accept Bitcoin, we're not going to convert it. We're going to keep it as Bitcoin. I believe in that. I had a Bitcoin business starting in 2013 or so. So love Bitcoin.
Yeah, I love telling the story. I accidentally made like $30,000 in Bitcoin because I meant to sell it and I forgot.
Nice.
So Katie asks what I think this is actually Dusty operating under Katie's account. Says, why Boxabl versus other tiny home builders? We've talked about modular homes, like other factory built homes, but there's also this concept of tiny homes, and a casita is a fairly small structure. I don't know that much. I know there's this whole field of tiny homes, and I feel like it's a big mess, and there's all these different approaches to it. Do you have a sense of how this compares to the different kinds of tiny homes that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're way ahead of all these guys for a number of reasons, and a lot of them have been mentioned on this call. The goal is really to lower the costs, and one of the problems with the tiny homes is they've compromised, whereas we haven't. So in order to fit the shipping dimensions, those are 8-foot wide houses. An 8-foot wide house is not going to ever be a huge market size because not everyone's going to want to live in that. The ceiling height might be low. There might be other compromises in there as well, and they're not cheap either. Those tiny homes, but they have a niche place in the market. Boxabl is trying to provide a solution for everything.
Well, I mean, we talked about stick built. it would seem to me that a stick-built 400 square foot home wouldn't cost that much. Am I wrong? Or maybe I am wrong.
Get a quote in California. It's going to cost
Well,
an incredible amount, several $100,000, I think.
yeah.
It's crazy.
Okay.
It's totally crazy there.
All right. So I think we're good. And you don't have plans to I mean, I feel like you're still early yet. Somebody said about marketing through Home Depot. I think it's like, I feel like this with Tesla too. People want Tesla to be like, look, they got to make more they got to make more batteries. They got to make more vehicles. You got to get your production down. You got to get this DoD contract done. You got to scale. And worrying about marketing or partnering with Home Depot or something is like, we can worry about that next year. Am I in the ballpark of correct there?
Yeah, totally right. We've got a lot of work to do. Paolo does have some experience with Home Depot. He's had some pretty big products selling in there. So we've thought about it a little bit, but you're right. It's too early. I mean, to even put one Boxabl in every Home Depot parking lot would be, incredible amount of manufacturing at this point.
All right. And it would be great branding though, which somebody else asked about. So, okay. So I want to, you've given me way more time than I deserve. And I want to appreciate James Loveridge. I think the answer to your question is the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you can guess what the question might have been, or whatever. You can check the chat later. So Galiano, I want to thank Galiano Tiramani. I want to thank you very much for coming on the channel. I'm going to let Galiano go, and I'll stay on the live stream to see if there's any other questions for me, and I'll probably close the live stream fairly soon. So thank you very much for what you're doing. Really appreciate it. I hope if I get out to Vegas to see the Boring Company tunnel system again, you guys have a factory I can come look at and I can make a video about that. I'm not asking you for a commitment, but does it sound like something you'd be interested in?
100% would love to have you do a factory tour. Just let me know, and appreciate being on your show. Please, anyone who's interested, go to our website, boxabl.com, check out YouTube, Instagram. There's a whole lot of action on there, and we're going to continue to post updates as we build this factory.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.